May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be free from harm. May all beings love life. May all beings awaken. Welcome to another Cuke Audio Podcast. I'm DC, Poobah of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, preserving the legacy of Shunryu Suzuki and those whose paths cross his. And anything else that comes to mind. I pray that you and yours are safe and comfortable, free from economic hardship, and able to get out and do whatever it is you want within the limitations of the universal precept of do as little harm as possible. So today we have a guest, Laura Burges. That's Laura Burges, Burges with one S, unlike the way it is frequently written erroneously. Laura, an old Zen student, friend, and she has published a book. I should have done this a little earlier, but I think people are buying it anyway because it's a good Christmas present. I bought 2 of them. I bought 3 of them. I bought, as I mentioned toward the end, I bought one for a 4-year-old granddaughter in Oregon and one for a 4-year-old granddaughter in California. And I bought one for my ex, Elin, who teaches very young children. And the name of her book is Buddhist Stories for Kids. And they're very creative, enjoyable, not sappy stories based on the Jataka tales, the tales of Buddha's past lives, but in a creative way. So at the end of this podcast, she's going to read one, and it's really good. So as soon as we've had our pause to meditate, let's give Laura a call. So when you hear the bell, if you're of such a mind, hit pause and meditate or whatever for as long as you like. And when you're through with the meditation or whatever, hit unpause, and we'll be here to hit the bell to end the meditation. And we'll give Laura Burges with one S a call.
David.
Laura, how you doing?
I'm good.
Yeah.
Wow, you're far, far away.
I am. What are you up to? What's happening?
Well, just waiting for your phone call. I've been really busy because of these 3 books that are kind of coming out one after another. But it's fun and very exciting, you know.
Yeah? Let me hear about them. Yeah. 3 books.
Yeah.
Normally people do 1 book, and then, like, if they have a bunch of books, a year later they do another or another. What's this 3 books coming out one after another?
Well, this was kind of a gift of COVID. You know, I retired from teaching in 2020, and then COVID happened, you know, and so I had a lot of time to write and think. And over the past 3 years or so, and what happened was there was the supply chain thing. There was a paper shortage. So this first book, Buddhist Stories for Kids, which is coming out on December 6th, was supposed to come out in the spring, but it got backed up because of this paper shortage. And then I wrote another book at Shambhala's request a book about Zen for kids, which at first I thought was a terrible idea because we don't really indoctrinate children into Zen. But, David, I started thinking about the way we do include kids at Zen Center. And so I found some kind of world wisdom stories that I rewrote that have a Zen flavor, and then included activities that I've done with kids during my 35 years of teaching children. And so I'm quite happy with what came out of that.
Well, so the first book, is it for Shambhala?
Yeah, these are all for Shambhala.
Yeah. So what's the name?
Okay, the first one, Buddhist Stories for Kids. I wanted to call it Monkeys in the Bodhi Tree, but because of search engines, they suggested Buddhist Stories for Kids, because if you Google that, my book pops up. So
right,
they know what they're doing over there at Shambhala. Are they your publishers too?
Well, they've published 2 audiobooks and 3 books of mine.
Yeah. Well, I think they're very helpful in terms of promoting things and, helping me along the way, since this is all very new to me.
Mm-hmm.
Buddhist Stories for Kids, Jataka Tales of Kindness, Friendship, and Forgiveness is the whole title.
Ah.
And then the Zen for Kids book is Zen for Kids, 50-plus mindful activities to bring kindness into the world, or to shine kindness in the world. So that's in the spring. And then my third book is called, it's a book about Zen and recovery. And they also retitled that one. I'm a little sheepish about the title. It's a little grandiose, but The Zen Way of Recovery, an Illuminated Path Out of the Darkness of Addiction.
Did they make all that up?
Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to call it Finding Our Way. But, they know all about marketing and all that kind of thing. So
yeah.
But each of these books was a labor of love, and especially, all of them for different reasons. The Buddhism and Recovery book, I've been talking about and working with people around addiction since I was Shuso and started offering things at Zen Center. So that's a real love of mine.
You're since you were Shuso, when was that?
2000.
Were you a lay Shuso?
Yeah.
And where were you a Shuso?
At Green Gulch.
Yeah, a Shuso head monk.
Yeah.
Right.
And it rained every damn day when I had to ring that bell.
The wake up bell.
Yeah, the wake up bell. Yeah.
Wow.
And then Linda, my teacher, Linda Cutts, offered me lay entrustment in 2009. So that's been another phase of my practice. Yeah.
Did you help Daya with her lay entrustment?
I offered to be part of that, but they had a nice little group that they had things going. But I did get to have dinner with her and Kelly, as I mentioned to you.
Yeah, Peter Vanderstairs. That's why.
Yeah, when it was all over. That was sweet of Peter to host that event.
Yeah. I heard about it from all 3 of them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a new, sort of a new era, this lay entrustment deal. Yeah. And I think it's a nice way to offer to people that have been practicing a long time, and to give some kind of honor or recognition to that.
Yeah. Well, like Suzuki Roshi said, he said, we're when they moved into the building back then, 69, I think he talked them around then anyway, where he said, we're neither monk nor lay.
And
yeah, go on.
Your book's about, Suzuki Roshi died a couple years before I showed up. And I feel like I know him through these wonderful books that you've published, Crooked Cucumber foremost, but these little stories about him, really stay in my mind. Encounters with students, things that I know some of those stories are about your encounters with him. They're very touching and evocative, and they're simple and short, and they really last. They pop into my mind at certain times in my own life.
You're talking about Zen is Right Here and Zen is Right Now.
Yeah, those.
Yeah.
But also, reading Crooked Cucumber, I was on sabbatical in Oaxaca when I read that book, and I really didn't know about the incredible loss and suffering that he'd had in his life. And it gave a whole new dimension to his character that I do feel, I almost feel like I didn't know him through his teaching and certainly through his students who carried on after him.
Well, we didn't know about any of that either. I had to dig it up.
Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah. There were a few people who knew. I mean, Japanese people knew. Because it was always, in the gossip. I think Dick Baker had heard about it. But Japanese people knew because it was big gossip in the Zen circles in Japan. His wife had been murdered. And, they said, he came to America out of shame because of his wife dying. Or, that's typical. Or they'll say a priest came to America to escape scandal or in Japan or something. But with him, the gossip was, to get away from the shame of his wife being murdered. But
that's a very Japanese attitude, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, I don't know.
The idea of faith. And...
Yeah. That could be. But we tend to, when we talk about each other, we tend to, in general, people gossip and certain ideas or pictures of people or why they did this or that or who they are get passed around.
Yeah, that's people for you, huh?
Yeah, right. So now on the recovery, did you get into dealing with recovery because of other people's problems? Usually when people are writing about or involved with recovery, they have their own story.
Well, I came to Zen Center partly because I was so demoralized by my overuse of alcohol. And I stopped drinking when I came to Zen Center and practiced as if to save my head from fire,
Mm-hmm.
And it was a wonderful way of life. I plunged in and practiced, and I went to Tassajara very soon after I came to Zen Center. But after 5 years of not drinking, it started to creep back into my life, And I realized, and I thought about some wonderful Buddhist teachers who had harmed or destroyed their communities because though they could sit for many hours at a time and give beautiful Dharma talks, they couldn't control their addictions, And so I just came to feel that Buddhism didn't cure my alcoholism and that I needed to find a recovery program that would address it in a very direct way,
Yeah.
And that was the beginning of a real opening of my practice because I was hiding part of myself. And I was holding at arm's length all the energy that you can use in your life when you confront your addiction and turn around and help others. It's a very vital and honest way of life that I discovered through recovery that I then, brought into my Zen practice. So I see them as working together in my life, but because of that experience, I feel like recovery comes first. And then if I'm solid in my recovery, I can do other things with my life as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
including practice Buddhism. So
Mm-hmm.
that's my path, and I've wanted to write about it for a long time, and I found a way that I could do it, that I could reveal my own story and then just share Buddhist teachings that have supported me in my own recovery, the precepts, of course, and paramitas, and looking at those things through the lens of recovery has been really helpful for me, and I think for other people too.
Yeah, I find I sort of married into 12-step.
Ah.
And I call myself a friend to friends of Bill. And, I've gone to a lot of meetings as a guest, but I quit drinking 18 years ago.
I didn't know that. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, I quit everything.
Uh-huh. Was that after you moved to Bali? I don't know how long.
No, I moved to Bali 9 years ago.
Okay, yeah. What's your life like there, David?
It's fine. It's affordable, and I can concentrate on work here, and I like the people. Now, and I can go swimming every day if I want in the ocean.
Oh, how wonderful! Yeah.
You said you were talking about your practice with the precepts and the paramitas. Could you go into that a little more?
Well, for me, the precepts are a very simple and straightforward guide to living, and it's very hard to live that way if you're not being honest with yourself about your own behaviors,
Yeah, well, let's think. What are the precepts?
Well, not to kill, not to take what is not given, not to lie, not to misuse sexuality, not to harbor ill will, not to slander others, not to degrade or disparage the three treasures. I'm probably forgetting one or two, but
yeah. I always get confused toward the end. I go, now what is it there?
Well, a lot of them have to do with speech, I think. Not to lie, not to praise self at the expense of others, not to slander. And I think of speech speech is sort of what connects our inner world to the outer world, and so we would do well to pay attention to what we say, and is it in alignment with our deeply held vows,
I agree with you. I think that's a really good point about speech.
And then these Buddhist stories for kids. Since I taught kids for 35 years, I wanted to offer something back to them, when I stopped teaching, and I wanted to write stories that they're not heavily Buddhist. They're really animal fables, I read about 100 of these Jataka tales, and then I chose 10 that I thought really could speak to kids if I wrote them that way. Those stories, David, and most of them, the characters are all male. Some of them are very punitive, so I didn't want to give the message to kids that if you make a mistake, you're probably going to get poisoned or trampled by elephants. Which is what sometimes that's the message in those stories.
Yeah.
I'd rather tell kids it's okay to make mistakes if you learn from them. So I had so much fun writing those stories. And the very first one I wrote, which was about the king of the monkeys and the mango tree. I wrote that a very long time ago and then just tucked it away. And when Shambhala asked me to write a book for kids, they asked for a writing sample. So I rewrote that story. And then I thought, it'd be really wonderful if there was a tree in every one of these stories as a kind of main character. because I know that the Buddha spent so much time under trees, and even as a child meditated under an apple tree, supposedly. And so every story has a tree, and then there's a moral to the story, some message that I find is embedded in that story to kind of highlight for the kids. So, and I presented it to some children to read ahead of time, my little focus group. So I got their feedback about it. That was really fun. Yeah.
That's neat idea. How did Shambhala come to? Did they ask you to write all 3 books, or how did this come about? Normally, publishers don't go asking people to write books.
I know it. It was really, it's kind of a wonderful serendipity. Ivan Burkholz, who you probably know, who I've worked with a lot on these books, called Zen Center and asked if they knew anybody that had worked with children and had practiced for a long time and could write. And I'm very pleased that David Zimmerman thought of me and suggested me. And so Shambhala asked me to do a writing sample, and I rewrote this story about the Monkey King and sent it off to them, and I didn't hear from them. And one morning I get this phone call from Ivan, and he's in a meeting, and he says, we sent you a contract. You haven't signed it. Are you interested in this project? We're not sure. It was in my Hotmail junk folder. I immediately got a Gmail account that day. I'm glad he thought to call me and ask me, because that had gone astray,
Huh.
So, so I worked closely with them with the book, and then, they had this fantastic illustrator, Sonali Zora, she's a Bangladeshi artist, and she just did you get a copy of the book? I asked Shambhala to send you a PDF of it.
Oh, I don't think they did.
Oh, phooey. Okay. Well, I wanted you to be able to...
Well, you can send me a PDF, good Lord. Don't you have one?
I can do that, yeah. Well, they have to do it, but...
What do you mean they have to do it?
Well, they've asked me not to do that myself, but to let them do it.
Oh, okay.
For licensing reasons or copyright or something or other.
Yeah, I understand.
It was after that book that they asked me to do another one, and it was kind of sweet. Ivan told me he threw all his publishing rules out the window, because he told me exactly what you just said, that usually they publish a book and see how it does before they offer another contract for another book. So I was very, very lucky about that. And then I suggested the Zen and Recovery book, and I was very happy that they took that on as well.
Mm.
So it's been very engrossing to do this.
Mm.
And I contacted David Schneider in Germany, and we went back and forth about some of the activities he had done in the Shambhala community with kids.
Oh,
that was fun reconnecting with him. He sent me a picture of you and Richard Baker and David Schneider together in Germany.
Yeah, that was 7.5 years ago. I went there for Richard's 80th birthday and the 20th anniversary of Johanneshof, their center there. And then David and Richard gave a workshop afterwards that I went to because I was there. I was there for a month. It's the only time I've left Asia.
So Richard Baker's 87, huh?
Let's see. Yeah. He's doing good, too. He's doing good. And his group is doing good. And Nicole Baden, who's his successor, he has a number of Dharma heirs, but Nicole is his successor. And she's young, and she is great. I love her. And I have a terrific podcast with her.
Oh, wonderful. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's very happy with that. And he's never been able to stop. He's doing, he's doing teachings, all sorts of stuff all the time. And, I relate to him quite a bit. And, I'm really impressed with his stamina.
That's amazing. Yeah. I also contacted Eric Larson, or maybe he tried to contact me. He was concerned about Silas Hoadley, but we, trying to reach Silas, and people have had trouble getting a hold of him. But Eric told me about being in the Zen Center library and Silas Hoadley taking a book off the shelf, and it was Jataka Tales. And then this was on the phone. Then Eric launched into one of these stories that I ended up putting in my Zen for Kids book. It's Prince 5 Weapons. And that made a very deep impression on him, partly because of his closeness with Silas.
I can talk to him about Silas. I'm going to talk to Silas on Friday.
Oh, good.
Your Friday. He's pretty gone with dementia, but I still Bill Porter takes him on walks, and they go have, I don't know what they go have, coffee, tea, something, and they go milkshakes, and you got me. Like every other Friday. I think Silas is now, Steve Tipton got hold of me and told me that he had talked to Silas and that it was really nice. We can still talk, but it's like, it's sort of surrealistic. It is very nice. Yeah. Steve said he'd moved into a care facility. It was like semi-hospice. So I thought he was sort of dying. But then Steve said that he talked to Silas through Bill. But we call Bill, who only uses his cell phone for walks with Silas. So he can talk to him. So, yeah.
That's funny, yeah.
I haven't been in touch with Eric forever.
Well, the way I connected with him was I was watching a online show from the Marsh Theater of Buto dancing, and suddenly I realized it was Eric Larson, he's retired from UC Davis, and he loves Buto dancing and teaches others about it, and you can see him on YouTube. It's really
wow.
It's really something to see. Yeah.
Wow. All right. Well, I think I'll get hold of him. I've been out of touch with him. Silas, was the only person that Suzuki allowed, I shouldn't say allowed, that Suzuki had asked to give talks in the in the Buddha Hall in Zen Center. And to Suzuki it was sort of like you have Dick and you have Silas, he was, when he was on his way out, before he died, he said that to, maybe Jerry Fuller. So Silas was very important to Suzuki, but, once Dick became abbot, there really wasn't room for Silas anymore. Their ways were just too, they didn't harmonize really. As long as Suzuki was alive, there was room for both of them. But, Silas moved on. And some people were upset about that, but I don't know. I don't think everybody needs to stay. They should move out,
Well, many people have. Now there are so many Zen centers around the country that were seeds from the San Francisco Zen Center, the branching stream sanghas.
Right. That's true, but I think a lot of them are going to die out. They tend to be mainly older people.
Oh, yeah.
But there will be things that doesn't bother me. That's happening in Japan to a very large extent. I mean, things are changing, and I just read today that there's moves in England to disengage the Church of England from political and educational role in the government. I mean, the bishops are in the, I don't know, House of Lords or House of Commons or probably House of Lords. I don't know. And there's, Church of England teaches in public schools. And now England is no longer a majority Christian country.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's 47%.
Everything I know about England, I learned by watching The Crown.
Right. They're 47% Christian, like something like 38% no religion. And next is Muslim, but it's very low. It's like 6% Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, other, things will evolve. But, what that runs into with me when we talk about the future is climate change. What do you think about climate change?
Well, it should be front page news every single day, and the results of it are there, even if people don't want to believe it's happening. But, for me, a huge thing in the United States, and not very many people know this, twice as many people in our country kill themselves as are murdered.
Uh-huh.
Now, that should be front page news. That is an incredible public health issue. And, of course, it's closely related to alcoholism and gun control because many people who kill themselves, a high percentage, are inebriated at the time, and they kill themselves with the gun they have in their home.
Uh-huh.
So to me, that there's so many things that people don't have the information to look at directly and really address. It's very frustrating.
I've thought, of course, about how dangerous it is to have a gun, especially if you're subject to depression.
Absolutely.
Or have any problem with impulse control. But
Yeah.
I've never thought about, and I've definitely thought about the relationship between alcohol and violence, which is unique, and no other
Yes.
drug compares
That's
with
true.
that. I asked a friend of mine who was like a paramedic. What do you call him in an ambulance?
Yeah, a paramedic. Yeah.
Yeah. And I said, what percentage of the calls you go on there for domestic violence involve alcohol and or violence and stuff? He said, all of them.
Oh, gosh. Yeah.
And I never thought, though, about an association between alcohol and suicide. It never occurred to me.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's very, very high correlation there.
Yeah.
I looked into that when a friend of mine killed himself with a gun who was drunk, and I thought, I bet this is very common, much more common than people realize, as heartbreaking as it is,
Mm-hmm. We're talking about recovery and how you got into that. Right. And, all right, well, let's go further back. You came to Zen Center, you said in around 73?
75.
75.
1975.
I certainly remember you. You lived across the street forever.
I did.
From Page
and now
Street.
I've been at Now I've been at 340 forever.
Oh, right next door.
Did you live in 340 at some point?
Yes, I have lived in 340 several times. Let's see.
I grew up in the East Bay, and we went to church growing up. We went to lots of different kinds of churches, finally landing on the Quakers. And I loved sitting in silence at Quaker meeting. And then I wasn't so excited about people standing up and saying stuff like they do at Quaker meeting. So the next logical step was Zen practice, where you sit in silence. And my friend Debbie West grew up in Pleasant Hill as well, and she was getting her MFA up in Davis, and I ran into her up there. We'd been best friends in fourth grade, and she was sitting with a small group up there in Davis with, I think Dan Welch was part of that group, and Mel Weitzman would come up. Ed Brown would come up sometimes for that group, and I was living not very far from Zen Center, so I started riding my bike over to Zen Center to sit zazen.
Oh.
And that's how I got my start. Yeah.
Oh.
I'd come to evening zazen, and I'd usually wear paint spattered overalls because I was painting houses at the time. And I wouldn't talk to anybody, and I was happy nobody talked to me. But I was at, evening service used to be up in the Buddha Hall, and I was thinking maybe I should talk to somebody or find out more about all this. And Ed was the Tonto then, Ed Brown, and he came up to me and said, "Do we have an appointment to talk?" I said, "No, but I would like to talk." And that was kind of a happy accident, or maybe he was tricking me into coming aboard. I don't know, but he told me as the time I went to practice instruction with him, and he said, it's great that you come to evening zazen, but if you were to come to morning zazen, it would change the things that you do the night before, which I thought was a very, very wise observation.
Yes, that's a good point. Yeah. Yeah. That sure happened to me.
Yeah. So Zen really, I was really ready for it.
Yeah.
I needed a big dramatic change in my life, and I really took to practice, and I have a theater background, and I love the kind of theater of Zen practice, the drums and the chanting and all of that ritual never turned me off at all. I always loved it.
And how old were you when you came?
I was 25 years old.
25 and 75. You're born in 1950.
December of 49. Yeah, I'll be 73. I'll be 73 in this coming month.
Oh goodness. So what happened? You came. So how did things progress? There you are in 75. You were sitting. You said you didn't talk to people. I never thought it. I always thought of you as sort of friendly.
I was very shy, though, and I was very reluctant about there were a lot of cults around then, the Moonies, and if people had thrown their arms around me and invited me to dinner, I would have been very suspicious.
Yes. So okay, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, I needed a little bit of space to figure out where I was, and then I really did long for a community, so that was part of what attracted me to Zen Center.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to Tassajara very soon, and I loved the rigor of that life, and being taking a break from American popular culture and finding myself in this little mountain village with very little electricity and no telephone to speak of, and it was a wonderful. I feel very, very grateful that I got to have that experience, and that so many of us have had that experience at Tassajara.
Yeah.
And then, I met my husband, Michael Ray, there, and we had Nova.
Right.
And we moved back to the city, and then, it turned out we didn't know each other that well just based on our Tassajara experience. I think this happened to some couples at Zen Center, that they felt it was meant to be, because they'd found themselves through practice, but maybe in the real world it doesn't work out so well. So we broke up, but I I ended up working at Smith and Hawken, and I was at Smith and Hawken when everything fell apart.
So wait a minute. That's 8 years later.
Yeah, when we came back from Zen Center, from Tassajara, I did a lot of different kinds of jobs, but I did end up working at Smith and Hawken, and I was there when the apocalypse occurred. And I kept on there though. But after being at Smith and Hawken for a year and a half, I had taught in the one-room schoolhouse at Tassajara when we had families come down for a year.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a little classroom there. There was a little preschool, and then I taught the elementary school kids, just a handful. And then later, when I was looking for a school for my daughter Nova, I was standing in the hallway of New Traditions Elementary, and I really felt this calling. I felt this opening that I could teach kids the rest of my life and never get to the bottom of it. And so I went back to school, and I got my credential, and I taught kids for 35 years, third grade the whole time pretty much.
Oh, really? 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 Oh,
and
that's great.
I taught at the San Francisco school, and I think your sister had something to do with that school.
Yes, she did. The San Francisco school was started by Ginny Baker and Yvonne Rand and Renee Luby.
Yeah.
And actually, I went out there with, I don't know who, Yvonne took me, I guess, looking at the building out there by Silver exit on the freeway.
Yeah.
Is it still there?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God. And it was sort of Montessori. It wasn't hardcore Montessori.
That's a good way to describe it.
Renee Luby, Susan, my sister, knew Jenny, and she knew Yvonne better than Jenny, but she knew Renee Luby, too. I don't remember why. They were friends. And Renee got more into teaching and needed somebody to run the school. So they hired Susan, and Susan did that for years. And then
okay.
Joe Freitas, who'd been elected district attorney, liked what Susan did so much. He was not going to be in his office. He asked her if she'd come be his office manager. So she got into doing that, and she ran some pretty big legal firms in San Francisco and retired just a few years ago.
Gee.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, that was neat. I loved that school. I had little contact with it because of all that. And you taught there? You taught there?
I taught there. I taught, my first year teaching was at Alvarado Elementary Public School. And then I was actually invited to come interview at the San Francisco school, and they liked me and I liked them, and that was a great place for me to be and a great place for my daughter to go to school.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a very progressive school. I was given so much freedom to develop my own curriculum and teach the things I love to teach and do it in the way I love to do it. And teaching has changed a lot. And that was a real kind of an oasis of elementary education. I'm very lucky that that's where I spent my life teaching kids.
Yeah. Oh, I want to ask you about something. There's a lot of controversy in America now because of the wokeness and education. You know what I'm talking about?
I do.
Tell me about that. Can you explain what it is, what's happening? I know people that are really upset about it, and people who are really into it. And
what are they upset about?
Oh, bringing up topics around sexuality to kids when they feel they're too young, and there's people who feel like, Kelly, my son Kelly, who you had dinner with, he said up in Spokane, he finds so many of the kids of progressive people are all disturbed, wondering what sex they are, and thinking about gender issues and that sort of thing.
Uh-huh.
And he said, the more conservative people he knows who aren't into that, and their kids tend to be more, and the Christian kids, tend to be more just like normal kids and sort of, nice to relate to. Don't seem to be all disturbed and stuff. And one thing I said to him then was, yeah, people who have all the answers tend to, be more satisfied with everything, right?
Yeah.
And I told him I took a very powerful psychic I knew. That I set up a workshop at Green Gulch with back in the 85, I think. And I'd known him since I'd met Suzuki. He was an old guy. And I just went walking around with him, and I introduced him to a couple of people, but maybe we walked down the fields, and he said, these people here, they're on a good path. I said, why do you say that? He said, because they're disturbed. He said, like you take somebody that grew up being a fundamentalist, Muslim, Christian, into anything, they're not disturbed. They know,
Yeah, they know all the answers.
So anyway, I wonder, see, where I live in Bali, that we don't have that sort of problem. People are they know who they are. They know what they're, I don't know. Everything's sort of peaceful and copacetic. And that's true with the Muslims and the Hindus.
Well, that sounds lovely. There's so much discord in our country and so much demonizing of the other. I think this controversy over wokeness is probably much ado about nothing. I don't know what the appropriate age is to suggest to kids that they might want to change their pronouns, but I don't think that has to happen very young. I think that kind of identity issue probably comes up a little bit later in your life.
Yeah.
But
I wouldn't suggest to anybody they ought to think about anything. I would tell them, what my mother did with me, I think was great. My father died when I was 11. My mother made it very clear to me that there are gay people in the world and that that's normal. So it didn't have anything to do with me. And I was around gay people. Gay men was much more obvious because she was involved with the arts and opera and stuff. And, the guy who ran the local theater, he and 4 other men lived next door to my grandmother. And I was just, I don't know, I was used to that. And, but I think letting people know that there's various different types of people, and all that's okay.
I think that's a very good message,
Yeah. But you say it's much ado about nothing. I tend to think that,
well, what I mean by that is now Rick DeSantis, is very vocal about we're not woke in Florida.
Yeah, he's trying to make it illegal. He tried to make it illegal to talk about it.
It's like saying we're not in favor of opening our eyes and seeing things in the world. Being woke just means being aware and being sensitive and being open to difference and diversity. And so to me, it's quite ridiculous when somebody very vocally comes out against that. Maybe you can go too far with some of that kind of progressive education, and I don't know. I certainly try to have my classroom be an open place where, at the San Francisco school there were many gay families there because the school was very open to that. And if somebody used gay as a pejorative in my class, I would stop everything and say, someone just used that word like it's an insult, but raise your hand if you love somebody who's gay.
Yeah.
And that would be, it was as simple as that,
Yeah. That was true in my house too. Anybody that said you couldn't say anything homophobic or racist.
That's terrific. You grew up in Texas, right?
Yeah. Nobody I knew said racist things. Anyway, I knew plenty of other people who did, but mainly that wasn't the problem. Like we didn't use nobody I knew used the N-word. I knew kids in other schools that did. But my old public high school, I would never hear that. But, sort of like homophobic stuff was much more common. And Mother would let us cuss. We could drink alcohol when we were teenagers. We could do anything we wanted. If somebody said, he's a queer or something like that, she'd be right in the room saying, don't you talk like that. You can't.
Oh, that's great.
Right.
Well, she was woke.
Yeah, she was. She was tolerant and open. Yeah.
Well, do you think that how did you come to Buddhist practice?
No, I'm not going to get into that. We're talking about you and other subjects.
Because I wondered if your mother, being that open-minded, had any influence on you, and
my father
in terms
more
of your spiritual path. Yeah.
My father was the guru of our family. Sort of New Thought Christianity, which was, out of Emerson and Thoreau and like Church of Religious Science, Christian Science, all that. Mind only. I call it mind only Christianity. But anyway, I just wonder what's happening there. Well, I have a friend here. I just tell him that, he's brainwashed by fascist propaganda. I can always know what the latest outrage of the day on Fox News is by what he's concerned about.
Oh, boy.
And he was really into this gay pride has gone too far. He said, they used to be more, more low key. And I said, yeah, that's what they used to say about black people in the South. I said, yeah, but they're getting uppity now. And he'd say, these gay pride parades, he said they're grooming children to be. I said, he said, you shouldn't take 5-year-olds and see people twerking their butts. And I said, I've taken my 5-year-olds to gay parades. We love them. They're great. They're all, people are having fun. There's music. There's food. I said, who I wouldn't want a 5-year-old to be around is you.
Yeah.
I said, man, you're letting all this distortion and everything, take over your mind. Well, anyway.
Is this an American in Bali that you're talking about?
Yes. Only an American. Uh-huh. Maybe some Europeans, but much more. This is an American thing. So anyway, I didn't want to go on too long about that, but I thought you might have run into some of that where it's controversial in America.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh. So, all right. Now, so you were at Zen Center in 1975. Did you do stuff for Zen Center before you started teaching, or?
Yeah, I when I came back from Tassajara, I worked in the front office for a while. I worked at the Tassar Bread Bakery. I worked at Greens. But when I realized Michael went off to Taiwan, I had a child to support. So I realized I needed to make my own way financially. But now, my relationship with Zen Center is I co-founded the Sangha and Recovery Program, which brought a lot of people to Zen Center.
I hear,
who wanted to know more about Buddhism from a recovery point of view. That was a really lovely thing that opened the door for people who might have been shy about coming in any other way. And I teach classes and lead retreats, not just at Zen Center, but at other sanghas in the Northern California.
That's great.
Yeah, there's a group in Oakland at Lennox House. I'm the teacher there, and that's a Buddhism and recovery group. So that's my passion, to make Buddhism available to people who are struggling with addiction. So,
you should talk to Katrinka, my wife. She's always running little groups here. I mean, they're everywhere in the world,
well, that's good. Yeah. I saw a documentary about Kurt Vonnegut.
Yeah.
And somebody asked him, what do you think is the greatest contribution America has made to the world? And Kurt Vonnegut said, well, I would have to say, as a jazz lover, I would say jazz. But I would have to say it's actually Alcoholics Anonymous, which was the greatest social movement of the 20th century, in his opinion.
Yeah.
I was very touched by that.
I didn't know that. I love Kurt Vonnegut. That's really interesting. Nils Holm, you remember Nils, who
yes,
departed this earthly realm a decade ago, was like, I was very, very, very close with always, and really miss him. Anyway, he said the 12-step is the great American religion. That's, the religions that came out of America are the big ones: Seventh-day Adventist, Mormon, Jehovah's Witness, New Thought Christianity, like Christian Science, and those. But he said 12-step was the great American religion. I thought that was really interesting. It's hard to get people in Asia. In general, Asian culture is a very different one from another. But like, say, here, there's a stigma, like there used to be in America, or, getting therapy in America. Oh, you're crazy. We shouldn't have you working here. There's a stigma to it. So I've been around some, organization which is making AA, NA, Al-Anon Center available to local people and treatment for free or whatever. But, it's hard for them to feel that it's okay.
Well, I hope that breaks down in Asia, that it becomes more acceptable for people to seek help when they need it.
Yeah, alcohol is a big problem everywhere, and it's hidden.
And it's such a lonely disease, and it has such repercussions on family, and so I would hope that Asia would open up to that. But I know there are different forms of recovery all over the world, which is a good sign for the future, I think.
Yeah. Hey, I wanted to say one thing. Michael Wright was in Taiwan in 1986, right?
That sounds right. Yeah.
I saw him there.
You did?
Yeah, I went to visit Elon.
Oh, wow.
And I just barely pulled that memory out. It's very vague.
He went there to study Qigong.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, we saw him. Yeah, I was there for 3 weeks.
Oh, I'll have to mention that to him, that he remembered that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you worked for Smith and Hawken. That's interesting. And Lou Richmond was there.
Yep, he was.
Yeah, I've heard various Smith and Hawkins stories from others too. Elon's sister worked there for years.
I survived Smith and Hawkins.
Well, is there anything we haven't touched on?
Well, I would just like to say that I hope people will keep an eye out for this upcoming book that's coming out on December 6th, and it's available at Shambhala, but
You've
also
got to
Amazon.
say the name of the book. Never say book. You say the name of the book.
Let me backtrack a little bit.
Yeah.
My book, Buddhist Stories for Kids,
Yeah.
Stories of Friendship, Kindness, Friendship, and Forgiveness, is coming out on December 6th, but it's available for pre-order right now. And if you Google it, it's available in all kinds of places. So I'm excited about it, and I hope a lot of people read it and read it to their kids. And I think for some kids, it might be their first introduction to Buddhism, you know?
Yeah, Buddhist Stories for Kids. Is that right? Am I saying it right?
Buddhist Stories for Kids by Laura Burges with one S.
Oh, right. Oh, God, when we put out, Cuke Press put out a brief history of Tassajara, one of the changes we had to make was to take one of the S's off your name.
Well, David, today I got the proofs for my Zen and Recovery book, and I'm supposed to look over it and make sure it's all right. I turned to the title page, and my name is spelled wrong.
Yeah.
2 S's. So I'm still battling that. In fact, it took Zen Center years to spell my name right. So
Yeah. And I'm such a fanatic on checking everything. But
that's good. Yeah.
I find assumptions. I just find it all the time. It's just hard to, when you're dealing with something, the approach should have is what could be wrong, what could go wrong. Not everything. The attitude. It's all cool. Everything's good. That is bad. That's you do not want that attitude. You want to be, what could be wrong about this? What could be better? But mainly the what could be wrong, what could go wrong. And then what I find, I try as hard as I can later, I find I had assumptions that I hadn't really looked at,
Yes, indeed. Well, that is spoken like a true Buddhist. What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, there's no end to it. There's no end to it.
One continuous mistake.
Yeah, that's right. And then your next 2 books are coming out when? And remind me of those names.
Okay, Zen for Kids, 50 plus activities and stories to shine loving kindness in the world, by Shambhala. That's coming out in the spring. And then on their summer list will be The Zen Way of Recovery, an illuminated path out of the darkness of addiction, also published by Shambhala.
My God, 3 books.
Really coming out one after another.
It's really hard to get published these days. This is including people that, I know people that have published books and are well known. They're having to self-publish, and Shambhala is apparently, the publishing world is in trouble. But I think in the publishing world, one of the ones that is doing well is Shambhala.
I think they are, and I think COVID was a big boost to children's books. Mm-hmm. People wanted to read books to their kids, and there was a big surge of. Ivan said, "Yeah, they're doing fine." So I'm happy to be aboard the Shambhala boat.
Yeah, I don't know Ivan. I know Sarah, his sister, but I don't know her well. Sam got us together with his mother and her, and I like Sam's mother, right? Congratulations on having 3 books coming out, on continuing to teach recovery and Buddhism, and it's all very impressive. Good for you. And
Well, thanks, David, and I really appreciate your interest in the books and the chance to talk about this and many other topics that we covered tonight.
yeah,
It was fun. It was really fun talking to you, David.
yeah, good talking to you too. And
And the way that you keep our memories of Suzuki Roshi alive, and the way that you keep our widespread Zen Center community connected, all over the world is really phenomenal. So thank you for that.
my pleasure, my pleasure. Yeah, I enjoy doing that. And why don't you read one of your stories from? Remind me of the name of the book.
Buddhist Stories for Kids.
Buddhist Stories for Kids. Good. By Laura Burges. All right.
Yeah, David, I thought this first story would be a good one because I think it's a good example of how I worked with these Jataka tales. This was just a very kind of sketchy story about a male teacher and his male students. And there's a message in the story. So to make it more accessible to kids, I transformed it into a story about a mother monkey and her children, but still conveying the same message of the original story. So, so it's called The Monkeys and the Bodhi Tree. Long ago, in another place and time, there lived a wise monkey mother. She and her many children made their home in the branches of the Bodhi tree, where many years later, the Buddha would take his seat and awaken to the truths of this life. This wise monkey had many children. She couldn't say how many, because they would never sit still long enough for her to count them. One day, as they played in the great tree, swinging from branch to branch among the heart-shaped leaves, she decided it was time to teach them a lesson. My children, she called to them, I am not getting any younger, and neither are you. It is time I told you about the ways of the world, so that you can start to take care of your old mother and to take care of yourselves when the time comes. The young monkeys turned their little faces to listen to her. Let me ask you something, my children. Why should we work so hard to gather fruit from the trees of the forest? Our neighbors get up at dawn to gather fruit. Why don't we sleep a little later and gather our fruit from them? I have seen humans take things from one another. All you need to do is hide behind a tree when you see another monkey coming with his arms full of fruit. Jump out from behind the tree, take him by surprise, and bring the fruit back here to share with your family. But Mother, what if we get caught? Asked one of the older children. Just be sure to do it when no one is looking, replied their mother, and wear a mask so you won't be recognized. This sounded like great fun, a new adventure for the mischievous monkeys, and right away they scampered down to the ground and scattered into the forest to gather broad leaves to make masks that would cover their faces. Only one little monkey, the youngest, stayed behind. What is it, my child? Why not scurry off with your brothers and sisters and do as I've asked you to do? Mother, you know that I love you and trust you. You have done so much for me that I would do anything you ask. But I don't understand what you say. What is it you don't understand, my little one? You told us that we should steal fruit from our neighbors when no one is looking. But that is impossible, he said. His mother's heart stirred a little. Why is it impossible? Because no matter what I do, even if no one else is around to see me, I can see me. The mother tilted her head back and laughed, gathering her youngest child into her arms. You alone have understood my lesson. The monkey mother, who would one day be reborn as the Buddha, called all her other children, and they sat beneath the Bodhi tree as she shared this story with them. They looked at one another sheepishly, and one by one patted their young brother on the back. The Bodhi tree smiled down upon the monkey family as the mother told her children, always try to do the right thing, even when no one else is watching. You are always watching. So that is Monkeys in the Bodhi Tree.
Ooh, that's good. Is there going to be an audiobook? Of course there will be.
There is an audiobook, and it's available now, read by yours truly, Laura Burgess.
Oh, good. That's what I wanted to know. Yeah.
Yeah, Shambhala invited me to do that, and I had a lot of fun. That was really a great experience in a little sound studio here in San Francisco.
Where?
Well, it's a guy named Andrew Roth over on Potrero Hill, and he has a sound studio right in the basement of his house.
Yeah.
He does all kinds of things, TV shows, movies, and books.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a good rapport, and it was really fun to do that. And I like this story because I think it's a very accessible way to teach ethics to kids in a kind of lighthearted way.
Yeah.
You might say that the precepts are embedded in there, and that maybe doing the right thing is doing the right thing even when no one else is looking.
Right. It's great. Very good.
Well, thanks, David. I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything else you want to add?
No, I just want to share this story with folks so they get an idea of what it's all about. And of course, it really comes to life with these really magical illustrations by Sonali Zora. So thanks for your interest in the book, and I hope people will get a hold of it. I humbly think it's for all ages, not just kids.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Good idea. I'll order a copy for my 2 young granddaughters. I have a baby granddaughter and a 12-year-old or something granddaughter. But
Wonderful.
But with Katrinka's son, there's a 4 or 5-year-old, and with my son Clay, there's a 4-year-old. So.
Oh yeah, that's great.
I'll do that.
Well, my school the school where I used to teach this week, because the book came out on Tuesday, they've really done a lot to get the word out about the book. And I have to say that it's just really tickles me, because I taught kids for 35 years, to think that some of my former students now are old enough to have kids of their own. And to think of my former students reading these stories to their children is really a wonderful feeling. So, David, thank you for your interest in the book, and I look forward to hearing our podcast.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
That's great. Take care.
Okay, take care.
Thanks a lot, Laura Burgess. That was very enjoyable. And, I didn't mention your other 2 books that are coming out up front, but we'll get to them later when they come out. Okay. This has been a Cuke Audio podcast. I'm DC, Poobah of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, coming to you from Sleepy Sonora with Doggett Bandita, Feline Cuchita, Guest Doggett, Boombita, and dear lovely Katrinka. And we're wishing you and yours and all of us a grand awakening.